So, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming along. Uh, we are now the second of our five talks scheduled for this year's Fireside Talks. This evening, we're joined by Dr. Niall Comer. Niall is a lecturer in Irish and Translation Studies in the Ulster University Magee campus. He's a native of Newry, County Down, but now lives in Glenallen, a rural area located between Dungiven and Garva, and has a particular interest in the origin of townland names. He runs two Facebook pages, the Gaelic Heritage of the Causeway Coast and Glens and the Gaelic Heritage of Southeast Ulster, which have proven popular with over 3,000 members. So with that very, very small introduction there, Niall, over to yourself.
Okay, folks. Well, thanks very much for the invite. And it's nice to see some familiar faces and some names that I recognise from engagement on the different Facebook pages. Before I start the presentation, I suppose you've already heard a bit of background there, but really my interest in place names is from, and you'll see tonight, from a linguistic point of view initially, but also from that has grown, I suppose, a huge interest in archaeology of the area, folklore, and everything that place names can give to us, because you find the more that you delve into the study of place names, etc., it doesn't just become a simple linguistic matter. It actually becomes much more than that. It becomes a geography lesson. It becomes a lesson in social history. It becomes a lesson a lot of the time in religious history. And to me, it's a very, very good way of, I suppose, opening up an aspect of our heritage to everyone. And it's sort of a safe landing ground, but one that also fascinates people. And I found that, place names they're living, breathing things. They're here. These are names that have been with us for centuries. And we see them on our road signs. We see them in our townlands. Those of us who still use townlands and who still sort of recognize them as sort of geographical divisions or territorial divisions. So this isn't something obscure, I suppose, that, I tend to avoid in research obscurity, because a lot of the times you spend your first, the first half an hour of a talk trying to explain someone. It was like a couple of weeks ago, I went to see, do you know the guy, Brian Cox, the scientist? I went to see him in Coleraine giving his talk about the universe, and it was brilliantly done show, whatever, but for the first 45 minutes when he was talking about particle physics and quantum physics equations, etc., that got me. I was gone at that stage. The second half was much better. What I tried to do is jump straight to the second half in the talks I'm given. So, but it is important to put things in context. So what I'm going to do tonight is, and I'm just going to share my slideshow here. And again, I'm happy to share. I can send this as an email, and anybody can take this, use it. I'm not anyway precious about this work at all. And again, anyone who's on the Facebook pages, feel absolutely free to use the stuff as much as you want in whatever makes, just work away. Okay, it's there for everyone to use, and that's the reason it was set up. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about Ballycastle. Can everyone see my screen? Can everybody see Ballycastle? Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Ballycastle, but before I talk about Ballycastle and the area, I'm going to give a sort of a general overview of place names and place name research, but I'm not going to do the Brian Cox. I'm not going to be talking about equations. I'm not going to be talking about archaic forms of Old Irish and, of grammatical developments in the language, etc. Because that work is done for the most part. But what I would like to do is to sort of take away. Sometimes people think, oh, such and such is an expert on place names or is an expert in archaeology. That's not what this is about. This is about showing people how to access this material is readily available, and once you sort of get to know where the sources are, etc., it's a great way of putting through a Friday or Saturday evening, where you can find, if you're curious about a place name, and you want to actually see, number one, what it means, but is there more to it? Is there an archaeological element? Are there folklore stories around it, etc.? That this is all pretty readily available. But before I do that, I'm gonna just start with, now let me see, start from the beginning. That would be good, wouldn't it? Okay, what part of my slideshow can you see here at the minute? Is it just the non-slideshow bit?
It's just
Oh,
the.
there we go. Yes. Okay. So tonight I'm going to be dealing with the area of Ballycastle is the title of my talk, but we'll be getting the actual place names of Ballycastle a bit later. But just to give people its geographical context, for those of us not from the immediate area, I can see definitely O'Driscoll is not an Antrim surname there. So we all know where Ballycastle is. And the thing about the coast, it's a fascinating place for place names because it was the North Coast in particular was a cultural melting pot, if you want, and you see influences. Obviously, the strongest influence on place names is the Irish language, and you could probably term a lot better the Gaelic language, because in the North Coast, what you have is this geographical area that stretched from the Western Isles of Scotland pretty much down to, you could argue, the start of the Spurns, the end of the Antrim Plateau, because it was much easier to travel over sea than it was to travel over mountains. So you find that there are a lot of place name elements, stories, family surnames, etc., that are common on the Western Isles, and this predates plantation. This predates Reformation. Was a natural, I suppose, a Gaelic kingdom, going back probably 1,000 years, maybe a bit less. So this is what fascinates me about this area so much. There are so many different elements. Now, I'm not going to get time tonight to go into great detail about all the different languages and examples of all cultures, but this is to give you an idea how you can find it yourself as well. So I suppose the first question, why do people study place names? What's the point? Is this something that happens in other societies? And what is it, our particular fascination with place names, townlands? I mean, I live in a rural area where townlands are fiercely defended, still, and we still have things like townland challenges, tug of war, mini football games. Children in the primary school are put into groups according to the townland they live in. This is by design now, but this comes from a rich feeling in Ireland of that sense of place. If we look at Seamus Heaney's poetry, for example, it gives you the perfect example of how the sense of place is very, very important to people in Ireland, particularly in rural areas. This has drifted quite a bit from urban settings, but there's been a renewed interest. I mean, as I'm originally from Newry, and find that there's been a new project going to make people aware of the townlands in an urban setting. Anyway, this goes back. This is not a new phenomenon. And the idea of place name study was originally called the Dun Shanahas. And if you look at the word Shanahas, Shanahas means the whole concept of stories and lore, etc. Some of you may have heard of the word Shanachie, or a storyteller. It's the same root. It's the same type of word. But to me, there was a much more practical reason for the study of place names. It was an early mapping system, where the owner of the land, the Taoiseach, or the leader, etc. This was a way. It was, as I said, an early mapping system. I can't really think of any easier way to say that before maps were laid down. So it had been cultivated as a branch of literature. And the reason for that was this was a big part of the whole concept of praise poetry, of bardic poetry, etc. Because what you found is that place names were used in these poems to show what land someone owned, and to extol the sort of the great deeds of the Taoiseach or the landowner, etc. So the study of place names goes way back. We find probably in one of the most famous tales in Irish mythology, Irish literature, the Tyne Bo Cúailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley. at the very end, the bull travels around Ireland and ends up dying. But a lot of places in Ireland, they make up a name that associates it with the bull's trip around Ireland. His sort of his last rattle. So place names have been an integral part of Irish literature and Irish culture for a long, long, long time. Okay, say that's that bit. So that's why we do it. The historical context of our place names. Our place names have been influenced heavily by as our language has, by the different population groups and cultures that have come to Ireland over the years. And I suppose the first one we have to talk about is early Christianity. And you find that from about, I suppose from the time of St. Patrick onwards, and Colm Killia, etc., that elements start to appear in our place names that are associated with religion, because with Christianity came settlements. With settlements came names. So some of our earliest names refer to, religious settlements. For example, probably the oldest we have is the word Donach. And Donach, and any Irish or Gaelic speakers in the room will recognize that as like Sunday, but its original meaning is like a small chapel, or a cell. And we get that in places like Donachadee, Donachmore. So, and the word, for example, temple or champel, these all come in with Christianity. So you find that the first wave, I suppose, and when Ireland starts to get a bit of a social structure, that social structure is built around religion. Therefore, the names, a monastery is set up. I mean, a perfect example where I live now, there's a townland called Ballintemple, and the original name was Champel Errigal, the Temple of Errigal. Errigal means, it's the same as the mountain, but it means a small habitation, like an oratory. So this would have been the initial settlement, and the name still exists. The next group is not the gap that I have on my PowerPoint presentation. I just don't know how to delete the space. So if you think there's something mysterious there, it's just a bad design of a PowerPoint presentation by me. So the next group that comes, we have the Viking invasions, the Norse invasions, and you find they're not a huge influence, pretty significant influence on the Irish language, but not as much an influence on place names. But you do have some. For example, along the east coast, with the fords, the Waterford, Wexford, etc., the name of the provinces, that's Stir at the end of Ulster, Munster, Leinster. That's a Norse word. Carlingford Loch, for example, Carlingfjordur is a Norse word, and again, the fjord at the bottom is a ford. So you see that these names, they're associated with the population groups that brought them. Then we have the Norman influence. And again, it comes round, really, it brings the names that are needed for the social structure, for the social change that it brings, and it brings you new words. It brings you words that, for example, Aglish for a chapel, Église. If you think of Église in French, ecclesiastical, all these words. So this is where you get like Aglish coming in. You get bigger chapels. The Normans built these stone buildings, etc., that weren't there previously. So a name has to be given to this, and then this becomes part of the naming process in Ireland. So all these different people are bringing words with them to describe the new social dynamic and the new social setup that they bring. And I've deliberately, the next one, the Irish-Scottish Gaelic Alliance, and that's really what I talked about at the very start. The natural landmass given, apart from the Shrewt na Moyle, the Moyle, the Mull of Kintyre. Apart from that small gap, anybody that lives in Ballycastle knows how close you are to Scotland, and that can be just consider that as, sometimes people find that hard to conceive. Look at Japan, or look at New Zealand, and people think, oh, New Zealand, big country, or Japan, but a lot of the case it's a set of islands. So why could this not be, considered in that way between, say, the Western Isles of Scotland and down. There was a great map um, produced a number of years ago by Colm Killia. That's a branch of Forest na Gaeilge. And I have it here, but it would be too awkward to show you it. It's basically Ireland, Wales, Scotland, etc., the historical British Isles tilted this way. And it just shows you that it's like a straight line from the Western Isles down into just right the way down to the bottom of Ireland. So this had an influence, and we see particularly in the North Coast, words like, if you say a place close to me, Ahadui, the word ahu is the word for a field, but it's not used in modern Irish at all. It's still used in Scots Gaelic, but that shows you that at one stage, the languages were pretty much the same. Certainly, the written language of classical Gaelic could have been read anywhere from the top of the Western Isles right down to Cork. Then, of course, we have the plantation of Ulster. Now, that is the big change. That's when it's not an organic, natural change. That's when English speakers who do not speak, for the most part, we do have evidence of people coming from Scotland, but for the most part, people who come and set up, plantation towns, etc., that don't have any knowledge of the Gaelic language or the Irish language or whatever, but they adopt the names. There are very few examples of a new name. People talk about Draperstown, for example, because the Drapers Guild in London owned the land, but people in the area were still calling it Ballinascreen. You have one other example, Balahi. There was an attempt to call it Vintnerstown for a long time, and it didn't work because the names were so ingrained that it was no natural change. So the changes and the influence to our place names, there were natural ones, but without the mapping of the plantation of Ulster, we would be in trouble trying to understand our current townland names. But I'll come to that in a minute. Okay. So what I suppose, what am I going to talk about tonight apart from that there? First of all, place name research in general, what do we do, and how do we make it straightforward? How do we make it accessible for everyone? And I'm going to talk a wee bit about the methodology, but I'm not going to go into this is not an academic talk. This is because this is about how we work at this. So I'm going to look at the methodology of the research. Then we're going to talk a wee bit about the geographical elements, and you'll find that you get societal and religious elements in place names, you get personal names, and you get folklore in place names. So all these things appear within the place names, and you'll find when you start into your own research, because I'm going to give everybody a bit of homework to do that I'm not going to ever see or mark or grade, but it just be for your own satisfaction and that you can do. So these are the things that will all appear: geographical elements, societal, religious elements, personal names is a huge thing, and again, an element of folklore where you get stories appearing up. Folklore usually appears in areas where the language and understanding of the language faded a lot earlier because people didn't fully understand what a place was, so they made up a story to go with it. That's why St. Patrick is buried in about 20 different places in Ireland, and probably buried in none of them. Because they say the name Padraig, and straight away, yeah, St. Patrick's buried here. Okay. So the first thing, how do we find out? So if somebody gives you a place name out of the blue, I'm going to show you the site that you go to find this, but what happened before that? It would be very easy for me to say to you, okay, if you want to find this out, there's the online place names dictionary, go on to that and you'll find out what it means. But the curious mind said, well, how can we be sure that this is true? What backs this up? What is the reason that we know, for example, that Ballycastle is Ballycastle or Ballycastle or whatever it may be? What evidence is there for this? So we have a number of sources. There are Irish language sources, English language sources, maps. Maps are huge. The Ordnance Survey. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk tonight about EDL and digital mapping. That's just, it's not that it's not relevant, but you can work that out yourself. But I'm going to look first at maps. Now, this is called the Down Survey of Ireland. Now, the word down has got nothing to do with the county. It's to do with the maps were laid down. Okay, and this is from the 1600s. And this has only been recently made available digitally. Now, you can see there that this is an attempt. This is mapping. This is early mapping, and it's actually very, very accurate for the time that was in it. Where you had people that were dealing with, obviously there was no such thing as an aerial photography. They had different methods of doing it, but you can basically search. You see the wee search thing up here in the corner, Antrim, Kerry, Antrim, select parish. You can do that for quite a large part of the country, and you will get early spellings. So what was happening was, when these early map makers, now they weren't making maps for the good of their health, or so a couple of hundred years later for posterity. These were practical maps that were being made for land distribution. And if you look at them, it shows you, you can see where there's highly forested land, where there's bog land and things like that. So don't read in too much into why the maps were made for land redistribution, essentially, and for land ownership. But they were done very, very well. And it's from these maps that we can start to piece together the earliest spellings of this. Because when the map makers were asking, for example, a local person, where am I now? Number one, the language that they would have heard most certainly was Gaelic. And even if the person was bilingual, which was highly unlikely at the time, because we're talking about the 1600s here, apart from maybe parts of the East Coast, Dublin, further down, the population was not bilingual. They were monolingual Gaelic speakers. So they were hearing the name of the townland and they were writing it down as they heard it. They were writing it down based on an English spelling system at the time. But for the most part, it's very close. So the further back we can go with our sources, the closer we are getting to. So if you use your imagination, if you see an early source, speak it. Don't try and read it. Because if you try and read it, just say what's there. And you're going to get something that's pretty close to what the original was. So we have maps. We have some early documents that go back, I suppose. There was a visitation done in the 1300s by Bishop Colton, and it was a survey by the church at the time, and it was a survey of of all the lands, etc., that the church owned, and you get different references to churches, to land there, and some to townlands. You also have not as much, in fact, there are Gaelic language sources, but not that many. So you'll have manuscripts, you'll have some poems, bardic poems from the 1400s, maybe into the 1500s, but they'll only really mention important areas. So, for example, you'll get maybe Coleraine mentioned because it's an important port town, but you're not going to get the minor place names mentioned. So this is where the maps are invaluable. The maps are the first time that the townlands are written down, to be honest, and that's from the 1600s. And if we didn't have these, would folk memory, would normal usage have kept them going? I'm not so sure. Okay, so then, and again, this is readily available online. This is done by Trinity College in Dublin. If you just Google Trinity College Down Survey of Ireland, it also gives you, by the way, if you're interested in this, for each parish, you can click into the townland, and it shows you that the shift in land ownership throughout the 1600s. So you can see who initially owned the land, who it was transferred to. You can also see how much land was owned by by different big landowners. So it's if that's the type of research that you want to do, knock yourself out. That's the one. Okay. The 1700s in Irish history are disaster, because a lot of the primary sources were burned in the Four Courts, in a fire in the Four Courts in the early 1920s. Now that's been pieced together again recently, but it's still not, well, I think it's probably available now, But so the 1700s, you get very few. You'll get wills. You'll get wills and documents. There's one that I found for Ahadui called Pike's Survey of Ahadui, where they just list. It's like a sort of a mini census. And there's Townlands mentioned there, and you can sort of look at the spellings of those and go, okay, does that tell me that, maybe there was a letter was the wrong way around, or maybe the word Bally used to appear in front of it and had been lost. So there are wee clues you can get from this, but really, it's not until we get to the early 1800s, the first third of the 1800s, that the game changes completely. And this is the Ordnance Survey. Those of you who have seen the play translations by Brian Friel will get the idea. And this is when the Ordnance Survey, this was when the major mapping project of Ireland happened. And again, it was for commercial reasons. And there was a lot of controversy about it. There was the standardization of spelling. This is why, for example, in Ulster, the word for hill in Ulster Irish is croc. It's not knock. It's it's pronounced CROC. But if you look at the anglicized spellings all over, it's CNOCK, knock. And people now look at things and go, knock something. But that's a Munster pronunciation. The reason for that is because in the 1800s, they decided they would standardize the spelling of the word all over Ireland. So the names, when they were written on new maps or on road signs, etc., even if the local people called it croc, it was written as knock. As generations move on, they base their pronunciation on what they see in a road sign, not what is spoken in the area. But anyway, that's an aside. The Ordnance Survey didn't go. The Ordnance Survey, the purpose of the Ordnance Survey wasn't to preserve place names. It was to standardize the mapping, and it was to have spellings. The Ordnance Survey, as a concept, wasn't actually concerned at all about the meanings of place names. But one man in particular was John O'Donovan. And without John O'Donovan, we wouldn't have this information. Without John O'Donovan and Patrick Weston Joyce, they're the two people from the 1800s who, and what they do is, so you have O'Donovan here, who's employed by the Ordnance Survey, and he takes a great interest in the meanings of names. So what he does is, with his notebook, and these are called the Ordnance Survey name books, he visits an area and he speaks to the native speakers. And in the 1800s, every county in Ireland still has a native speaker of some, and still has, communities of native speakers. Not huge amounts, but there's still enough of a residual memory of the language in every county for a decent explanation of what they mean. So he takes down notes of what different elements of place names mean, and he records these. And then Joyce does the same, and he publishes a book, maybe I think around the 1860s or 1870s, a 3-volume book, Dictionary of Place Names, where he takes all the common elements like, moor for big, or ard, or gort for a field, and he produces this basically 3-volume dictionary. But what you'll see is, here's an example. Now, I can't find the Ordnance Survey name book for the Ballycastle area. Unfortunately, I'm still searching. This is an example of a givey. Now, that's a river that flows from the Ban up through Ahadui into Garva and up Glenullen, up where I live now. And you see here, obviously, O'Donovan wasn't typing at the time. This is a typed up version of it. And he explains it as, Ageva, Agyevu. It's a ford of some description. And it's an attempt to understand what the names mean. It's, so he's more interested in what these elements of names mean. Yeah, he knows they have to be put on maps. He knows the spelling has to be, well, in his mind, the spelling has to be standardized into an anglicized version. But he's fascinated by what they mean. So these are invaluable for us now in interpreting what the names mean in the future. We also have a lot of historical descriptions, and you've got things like, Griffith valuation, and a few different other elements. And you can see here, for example, I think, so the historical description of the barony, I'm not going to go through all this here, but you'll see the barony of Kerry in South Antrim is bounded on the north and east with Do Caledonian and Irish Sea. That's the Caledonian, Scottish. But if you go down through this, it starts to mention parishes of Billy, Derrickehan, Rathmone, Ardmoy, Coolfatram, things like this. So in some of these descriptions, historical descriptions, you get the place names mentioned, but you get them mentioned as how people were listening to them at the time. There's one example, Cushion Dun. Okay, we call it now Cushion Dun with a K, but the word is the original was, I know it's bun, you get the bun out a little, but Cush is the original word, cos as in the foot of something. So that's closer to the more sort of corrupted spelling now. And you'll see examples of this right the way through, where you dip into older documents, you get all the spellings that you can, you organize them chronologically, and then you make an educated, sorry, it's more than an educated guess, it's nearly a scientific conclusion. So if, I'm going to show you how this works. So let's take, I'm going to stop this screen share for 1 second. So before I do, placenamesni.org is your friend. Okay. The vast majority of place names have been done for the northern counties. You have an equivalent called logonium.ie, which isn't bad, but doesn't go so much into the detail of sources, etc., and doesn't give you the wee stories that go around it. So when you go into place names NI, you search for a place name, and I'm going to show you what happens here when we search for Ballycastle. Now I have this. Just bear with me a second. Can you see me or my screen? Oh. Right. So place names NI. I need to share. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, you should see just something saying Zoom, yeah?
Yep, we can.
Okay. So this is the process. So placenamesni.org. Let's just hope this works. Okay, you see the interface? Yeah? Yep, all good. Okay. Search for your place name. All good again. Okay, now you're going to get a lot of stuff that says, things like place name ID is, place name contains, place name starts with, blah, blah, blah. Right. This is your friend. Again, place name contains, because if you just put in the spelling of it, you'll get it. So let's try Ballycastle here. Okay, and apply. Now, you're going to get the Ballycastles that appear, within the search boundary. But if we know, for example, all right, we're going to be talking here about, see, Ballycastle, well, town parks, this is going to be your one here. Wait a minute. Is it? Hold on, see. I think this is it. Let's see, I probably clicked on the wrong one. You see now. Oh yeah, so that's okay. Let me just go to this 1 second and get the correct one now. So Ballycastle. Yes, that's the one. Sorry. Okay, so you should all see now the screen, maps, etc. Now, this is a new feature in this. This is brilliant, okay? Because this gives you all, with a modern map, the townlands and exactly where they are and exactly how to search them. And this is very important because townlands, a lot of the times, are connected. And sometimes, if we look at them, never look at them in alphabetical order, because they weren't named in alphabetical order. They were connected to each other. I'm going to come and talk about that in a minute. But the point is, once all the sources have been collected, so the person that compiled this, and this is Pat McKay, whose Dictionary of Ulster Place Names is a must read for anyone. So if you look down here, these are all the references that they found to Ballycastle in all different documents going back over the years. So you get things like, Market Town. All right, that's not going to give you anything. The town of Sorley, so it'd be Sorley Boy. But you start to see Ballycastle. You start to see all the different references to Ballycastle, Ballycastle, etc. So this, you're going to start to realize, okay, this is what the basic research, the main research is. And then they come across with Ballycastle, Townland of the Castle. Okay. So that's pretty much how the meaning is discovered. You go back through all the sources and you come up with what the meaning is. And as I say, this site is wonderful for that. But if you want to take it to the next, so there's a bit more information there. The former town of Ballycastle is represented by the modern town parks, etc. But this bit, all this other historical bit that can be as interesting and sometimes more interesting than the meaning of the name. Sometimes it can be a sort of a bland enough meaning. Then when you start to dig and you go, oh my goodness, there's the remains of a monastery here. I mean, all you have to look is Bonnamargy. Bonnamargy, the name is like the bottom of the Margy River. I'm not going to. I'm coming to that actually. I'll not spoil that bit of it. But the name itself, but it's what the name. It's the rest of the information that comes from the name when you start to research it. So I'll go back into my. So you'll see this. By the way, that map can be accessed back on the original page. If you go back to see this, explore the map. Can everyone see where I have my mouse up here? See if you click explore the map. Okay. And just go in to here. Right. Where are we up? The Townlands should come up soon. You can do the whole of the north like that. You can see all your townlands and where they are, and you can zoom in and you can look at different map layers. You can look at maps you can look at this in the mid 1800s. But again, that's for you to do on a Friday night when you've decided that it's much better crack sitting in than going out. Just don't open too many bottles of wine because you go down a rabbit hole then, and that's never good. Okay, so I'm going to open my presentation again. We'll stop this share here. Can you see my presentation again now? Okay.
Yep, we can.
So the next bit of it is then, once you've done this, and you want to dig into a bit more information, you want to find a wee bit more about the place name. This is when you hit the Northern Ireland Sites and Monuments page. And again, to me, this is what brought anybody who's on the page that I have on Facebook. It's not voodoo. And yes, I do put an awful lot of work into it, and I do speak Irish and I know quite a bit about the language, but there is a method that anyone can do this, and the more people that are doing this, the better that the word spreads about, our heritage, our language, etc. So it can be done. And a lot of the stuff I do is not actually that difficult if you know how to do it. I suppose it's like anything. If you go onto the Northern Ireland Sites and Monuments, this is what you'll see. So you've got Townland, Council, don't worry about statutory protection and things like that. So if you want to find out, okay, I've sussed out, I'm told Ballycastle is Ballycastle, place of the castle. Right, that's fine. At a very basic level, people want to know that that's what it means. If you're like me, or some people that I know are on this call tonight, that's not enough, And in particular, if you want to explain the heritage of an area to people, it's not enough just to say this means the place of the castle, because they look around and go, "What castle? Don't see one." Yeah, and when you're trying to explain it, when you're also trying to explain to people, and there are people, and this is not me being in any way divisive or political, because I have no interest in politics whatsoever, but there are people who will question the derivation of place names and say they don't have any basis in language. A lot of it's crazy stuff. But the point about it is, at times you do have to actually prove. And on another level, if you're talking to children, we did a project recently, an outreach project in primary schools. And if you say to a child of the age of 10, Ballycastle means place of the castle, and they go, but there's no castle here. And you have to explain it, because children are very black and white. It's a case of, well, I don't believe you because I don't see a castle. So you need to be able to have a wee bit of evidence behind it. And this is where you go for that. So you see here, Ballycastle, Causeway Coast and Glens, you do your search there, and this is what comes up. Now, this there's a long list of stuff. There are things that you can ignore. There are words there like see the souterrain for caves and that. A lot of this archaeological work, it's not that it's outdated, but there hasn't been a huge amount of archaeological digging done in the north in the past 20 years. Well, maybe even 30. I think 20 years ago was 1990, unfortunately, but apparently it's not. Um, but the thing is that if you see things like, um, for example, the third one down there, site of medieval parish church and graveyard, now modern graveyard. Things like that will catch my attention all the time. If you see things like natural feature, that means it mightn't be just all that interesting. And this is where you sort of start to footer with it and say, okay, I'm going to have a wee look here. So in this one, if you click into your wee blue guy here, and you will get information about Ballycastle. Okay, so you go in there, it tells you all the information, the archaeological information that has been built up about it. You can go in further, like there's a PDF there, and it has basically scanned copies of all the historical information that's been gathered up about Ballycastle. But another thing you can do is, and there's a bibliography with it as well. If you want to look into Joseph Francis Bigger, he was the guy, he was the main man at collecting stuff. But see where it says view on the map, this bit here. This takes back to our mapping system. And the first thing it'll do is it'll tell you exactly where the castle was located, according to the older maps, according to older surveys, etc. And this is a modern map. But what you can then do is, and this is trial and error how to do this, don't want this to be too technical, you can strip it back, and that's the exact same map, exact same location from the 1830s. Okay, so it just shows you, and there it says ruins of castle. It doesn't have that, it doesn't say ruins of castle on the modern map, but it does on the old map. So there's your answer. So that's how you put a wee bit of sort of substance on your place name research. So that's a bit about the background. That's a wee bit about I'm looking at 8:15 already. Are you happy? I have a few examples. He's happy to stay on for about another 15 minutes or so. Are we okay with that? Anybody who wants to leave, I'll not be at all offended. Don't worry. So once we've gathered all this up, once we've looked at all our sources, and we've done a wee bit of archaeological research, then we present. And to me, I think this is the only way forward in presenting place names. It used to be that I can't see a copy of the books that I have, but it used to be that any books on place names were just there's a book, there's a list. That's what they mean. Grand. You look at that and you go, oh, that's great, and they're invaluable. You put the book down, and it goes. And to me, if you want to get people to engage, there needs to be a better hook. There needs to be a visual hook, and there needs to be something that strikes the imagination. So if you take, for example, so I've used this entire process through the pages that I have on Facebook at the minute. That entire process I've just shown you, I will do that every Friday night or whatever night I decide to do it. It's usually once a week. And that's the process I'll take with the Townland. I'll maybe do 2 or 3, but that's so I'll find out the meaning, and then I'll see, okay, is there a way I can visually present this to make it to get people to engage a bit more? So, for example, Bun the Margie there. Again, the meaning Bun the Margie is the foot of the River Margie. There's nothing, it's just the foot of the river. And then a bit of a meaning about a boundary river. We can see that. But then that brings you on to what's located there, the Franciscan Friary. And the conversation goes a different direction, and it's visual. People can see it. There's a lot of conversation happens about it, but it's still connected and it's still rooted in the place name. So it's the place name that acts as the catalyst to help you dig a lot further. So again, I mean, so you're getting loads of things there. You're getting linguistic, a linguistic lesson on the Margee. You're getting an appreciation of the language of the area. Then, you're getting the historical aspect. You're getting ecclesiastical history. You're getting families that were in the area, the MacDonald clan, etc. And you're getting it also put into, like, for example, the Franciscans left the ferry with the troops of Elizabeth I moving into the area. That's placed in Ireland in a European context. So to me, it has planted, place names have the ability to take you to another level of historical understanding. Then we have this is one that I like in particular. Sometimes you can't always get a brilliant visual representation, but Karen Sampson is a fascinating townland for me, because it really, the word Samson it's got nothing to do with Samson and Delilah, right? Except an original translation of it was in North Uist, North and South Uist, and what he calls in the middle of it, Benbecula, Gaelic speaking islands of the, which I spent a wonderful weekend on a while back. There's a place there called Bruchach and Tamsine, Samson's Bray. By the way, the word Bray that we have, for a hill, the original version of that is Bruchach, is a brew, it's a bank. You'll see it in the bank of a river. But the point about it is, it was translated as a very strong man is supposed to have lived there in the past. So that's obviously people connecting it to the biblical story of Samson. But there is actually a name in the Annals of Ulster, 735, called Samson, as in a name of Gaelic derivation. It probably is connected originally to the name Samson, which is a biblical name, but it shows you the connection between the two, and it shows you the links that do appear. So the next one I'm going to look at, if it lets me move on. Yeah, Dun McKelter. And again, I've picked just a few unusual ones tonight. And once you've done all the research, this brings you into the world of folklore. So we've seen in the previous two examples where you have unusual names, etc. But this is bringing you into a completely different level, because and anybody who wants to know about Ballycastle in great detail, the man, my good, unfortunately late friend, Faker McGowan, produced the ultimate study on the place names of North Antrim. And to me, it's the most comprehensive work on place names I've ever seen. He also did work on Mayo. We think that it was the most words ever written in the Irish language, something like over 1 million in one publication. But anyway, say Faker's no longer with us, unfortunately. But the work Faker does here, this shows you how a place name can connect you to folklore and to mythology and to Irish culture. So, for example, our Gaelic culture, whatever you want to call it, he records the rare person named Celtchar is used of a fictional warrior of Ulster. It goes down what it means, concealment, but the name appears in Downpatrick, and then it talks about the name comes from the Ulster cycle, and this may have been used to reinforce the story being relocated to North Antrim. It brings it into a story that comes from Old Irish. It ties it up to Tyne Cooley, the cattle raid of Cooley. And even though there's no remains of a fort there, I mean, it's anybody knows what I mean, where this place is. By the way, say if you're studying Townlands, do yourself a favor and go to them. The sense that you get, the knowledge that you get, the relationship that you develop with the land. And this might sound a bit deep and mystical, because I would have laughed at myself for saying this 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The point is, when you start to study the land and study the placement of the land, you do feel a massive, particularly I found this since COVID, you do feel your relationship changes. I can't explain it, and I'm not an overly spiritual person, but it 100% the relationship with the land changes if you study the meaning of it. Anyway, so it shows you here how, again, how names, how place names can pull us into a different world. This is a fictional world. This is a world that comes from, Irish mythology, etc. Then, of course, we have something that's a wee bit more somber, and we have something that reminds us, a name that reminds us of our own past, and of our own, I suppose, the very sad situation and disgraceful situation, but sad situation of children that who died before they were baptized, had to be buried outside, blessed ground, and these are the killing. The word kill is originally a small cell, but it can also mean a cemetery or a graveyard. And the killing sites throughout Ireland, there's a lot of them. There's books written on these, actually. But here's one, for example, Drum na Kill. Okay, so Drum is a ridge. Na Kill is na Killia, the ridge of the graveyard. And again, once you start to do the research, you find there's small burying grounds called Killia, which are, which were graves for unborn children. And a lot of the time, these names and the traditions behind these names actually exist still in living memory. And for example, in this place, do you see that the picture of that? Not a great picture, but of the stone with the cross in the middle of it. That is in the Townland. It's like it's based into a wall now. I haven't been on it in a long time, and if anybody knows, let me know. But the point about it is, it's a very interesting. It calls it an archaeological secret, and you will find this if you do the research on the particularly the Northern Ireland Sites and Monuments page. You get all these wee, like, for example, this is a bit of a tangent. The Ogham Stone, in Dunollis in Coleraine, in a grave underground. What's there an Ogham Stone doing? It's not. It's there by accident. It was taken from somewhere else, and it's used as a they had dug a cave in, and somebody found Ogham writing on it. So, like, there are things like that. You come up with sort of these very strange things that pop in and out of our place names. But this is what you get from digging. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not enough, I think, now just to go, there's the name. There's so much more that can bring to you. An unusual one, Broombeg and Broommoor. This is from the word brew, and a brew is a hostel, and it's used now for youth hostel, brew oiga, and things like that. But brew is a very old word in Irish. The idea of hostels were people who travel. Just don't think of a hostel now. Just think means just somewhere where you could stay. But clearly, once you start to dig there, not literally dig, but once you start to do the research, you see there, Broommoor, situated on the lofty eminence on the holding of Charles Boyd, there stands the ruins of a fort, circular in form. Okay, so there are times that you can actually find what this refers to. Brewbug, Broommoor, so it means the small, what do you call it? What word did I say there? The small hostel. So this was the tradition in Ireland, I suppose, in early Irish society. I think it's where the whole idea of, the Céad Míle Fáilte, the idea of being welcome, which you see still. Unfortunately, we don't have it as much now. But if you look at a lot of the cultures, the Sami people, for example, and sort of that's sort of Sweden, Finland, etc. People arrive there, and it's there's no question but what they're welcomed. And you see it with a lot of tribes as well. There's no question of the first reaction is to welcome someone, not to turn them away. And I think that this reflects this, that the fact that we still have these names like brew, etc. for hostels. Anyway, I do tend to ramble a bit. Apologies. I'm going to finish off with just a few. I've given a list here of a lot of the townlands. And oh, sorry. You see the Broommoor and the Brewbug? It's actually probably in reference to a Motte and Bailey type structure. Remember way back at the start, I talked about the Normans and the structures that they brought. They brought obviously the idea of the Motte and Bailey, and there is evidence in Broom Bug and Broom Moor of a Motte and Bailey. I suspect that the Motte and Bailey is the Broom Moor, the big hostel, and I think the other wee fort is the Brew Bug. So it's a differentiation between, in one townland there was a big fort, so we called it, or a big habitation, so we called it Brew Moor. That became Broom Moor, and it becomes now Broom, and then Broom Bug in the other one. That's just, that's just my take on it at the minute. Okay, so to finish off, I've listed some of the other townlands that appear in the area. Some interesting ones, like a lot of them geographical, Coolwahara, Coolmyra. By the way, if I'm pronouncing any of these not like the way they are in the area, I'm pronouncing them based on their, their original Irish form. So don't hate me, as they say. So Coolwahara, the corner of the plain, clearly a geographical element, and if you look at it on the map, you can pretty much guess, where that'll come from. Craig Boy, yellow rocky place. Now, colours, word of warning, colours don't always mean colours. And also do not look at colours with the English language spectrum. The spectrum of colours in Irish is different. For example, the word for green can be glass, can be garum, depends what you're talking about, can be leah, which is commonly the word for grey. Also, so bui, think of all the versions of yellow that you can think of, from, like canary yellow to, the colour of, do you know when rushes lose their greenness and they get that really like brown bit? I'm only after making some bridges crosses and didn't use all the rushes. Here, look, there's the example. There, that's an old one, right? So that's also bui. That's not brown. So don't think, if you're looking at a place going, but why could this be called? Why is this called bui? I don't see yellow flowers or anything anywhere. No. The other thing is, colours are also used to distinguish between. So say if there's three Creggan place names beside each other, you could get Creggan Boy, Creggan Do, Creggan Ravach. Just three different colours used to show the difference between them. Next one, Carn Moon. Carnan Muine. Muine's a name, and that's where you get from Rathmone, Foster. We think that's a very old Gaelic name, and we think that probably refers to an original landowner, Taoiseach, important person at the time. Clare, which is beside, just you come into Ballycastle. That's the townland before you come into town parks. And you look at it and it says Clare, and you might think, it just means the word Clar for a plain. But if you research back, it's actually, the full name is Clar Cashlan. So that's in reference to, but the Cashlan bit has been dropped. So that's in reference to the Ballycastle. Gordamari, that's sort of south of it a wee bit. Now, it translates as field of the dog, but it means field of the dogs. So when you get animals in place names, one animal means loads of them. Okay, so it doesn't refer to one dog. That's why Limavady, for example, I know we've got the story about the dog leap and all that, but Lem for leap means a crossing place for animals. So that would be the crossing place for hounds to go across the river. We talked about Bondamarigi, Brohan Leah, Bruchan Leah, small grey bank, Tornabodach, Tour, Namodach, the cattle field of the churls. I've always wondered about that one. The churls is sort of not a very desirable person. Is that, I don't know, is that where bad cow hands were put? I'm not sure about that one. And then Turnaroon or Tornaroon, cattle field of the red patches. Again, don't think of red that we do. Think of soil. It would be soil turnover. Gort Connie, field of the firewood. No Valley, No Walia. There's a bit of a debate about that one, whether it's Newtown or the word a form of the word ahal for a yew tree. Again, that's an iffy one. By the way, there's times you'll not get the answer. 99% of times you will, but there's other times you just have to put your hands up and say, I'm not 100% sure. Cairn Samson's Cairn, we've done that. Drim and Willen, Ridge of the Mill. If you look at that one, there is evidence in the 1800s we still have a mill there. So sometimes people tend to think of this as stuff that happened 300-400 years ago. That's not the case. A lot of these features are still there. Kilcraig, again, there's another burial ground. Drumavoli, Drumgola, Ridge. Now you'll see Drim, and if you go into the map at some stage later, see all the drum names around Ballycastle, and they're sort of to the east of it. There's a ridge that runs through there, and that drum covers them all. So Drumgola, so there's going to be a fork in the river there. Drim and Hammond. All our hurling fans don't be getting excited. It's the same word, but Caman means a bend in the river, just like the top of a hurling stick. And then Drim and Hitch, Ridge of the Cats. Again, it's going to be plural. And then Drim and Ridley, that's a Norman name, 100%. So again, Ridley's Ridge. So Drim and Ridley is the anglicised form of it. Acra Valley, that's another one I'm not sure about. Acra certainly is going to be acre. I think the last word's Billa, which is a sacred tree, but I don't really have any. There's not enough evidence there to be 100% sure about that. Last couple, Drumarowan, again, the red place. Ballynagloch, Townland of the Stones, probably Stanton Stones. Or clock can also mean a stone keep, or another word for a small habitation. Barnish, again, is a gap. So where Barnish Townland is, there is a gap between the two hills. This is where you have to go out and see these things. Go out with your map, go out with your phone, go and look for it. It's apparently it'll change your life. I'm good place. It's good advertisement for hill walking. Again, Ballyvoy, the Yellow Townland, Ballywee, Ballyreabach, Speckle Townland. There was Craig Fad, Long Rock. We talked about Doon Vakelter. Drummond Ridge of the Fort, Drumnachillia, Ridge of the Graveyard. I like this one, Ballynagard, Townland of the Artificers. What we're talking here is about craftsmen. So clearly there was, I would suspect that this was either a smithy or swordsmen, or people could make wheels for carts. But this was a place specific to them, probably near water and probably near, access to wood. That would be very important too. And just to finish off, Mahireen Donald, Donald's Little Plain, a very unusual name. That. The next one is the most unusual one I have come across ever, Losset. And it's an old Irish word, lossage. And it means, do you know if you're kneading bread and you're pushing through it like that? It's the same idea. It's, to me, I suspect that it's land that you sort of have to push through. I need to do a bit more work on that, but I think that's pretty much it. Again, another name, Baradach, Baradach, the town of the Black Guillemots. We're only 3 miles from the sea. You're going to have birds. You're going to have animals in the place names. Brachny, speckled place, usually speckled with rocks. Mullards are hillocks. Drumini is Druminan, Inan's Ridge. That's the same name as we have in Kilmacrennan in Donegal. Again, a couple of surnames there. O'Bwihily, probably an early form of O'Boyle or something like that. Boyle Wihily, Cooley Wihily. McCartler's Ploughland, Farron. The word Farron always is land, and if you see Farron and you see a surname after it, you can be pretty sure that the person had a bit of wealth. Because if they had land that was just specifically ploughland for their house, people were in poverty. And then we have Broom Big and Broom More. And with that, folks, that's me. So, anybody got any questions?
Neil, thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. Some of those resources, I think, are going to get a lot more hits after tonight. I know certainly I was playing around with it there, absent-mindedly, just having a look at some of the place names around Ballycastle. While other people get their thoughts together to bring up any questions, going back to Clare.
Yep.
You were saying that it was to do with the plane of the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive me, my Irish is atrocious, so I'm not even going to attempt it in front of so many people. And you were saying that might refer to the castle within Ballycastle itself.
I'll show you. Go ahead and keep asking me there. And
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. There is a reference to a Clare castle, perhaps at the Threepenny Bit,
okay,
um, a sort of raised mound there, and there's also a 17th century bawn supposedly in the area.
yeah,
We're hoping to excavate it as part of our Ballycastle project
okay.
to have a community excavation up on that bawn there. So I wonder if the castle referred to in the original Townland name might refer to
A
either of
different
those rather than the castle within Ballycastle.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's I've no reason, to doubt that it wasn't. It's just that, so it's when you see things. I'm just trying to find here where where I did read something specific earlier about that. Claire, this of course I go to find the resource now. I'll not be able to. Claire, yeah, see, County Antrim. Kerry, yeah. So yeah, I'll share my screen again and show you and show you what we have in that. So it talks about, the meaning of the word Clare, and then it said, in the townland of Clare there stood an ancient castle said to have been founded by the Scots clan of the MacNeils, called Clare Castle. Um, so it talks about the castle that you're referring to. So it's probably, yeah, it's probably a separate castle, and I've no reason to doubt that at all. Um, when is the excavation going to happen?
All being well, in June. We're looking at a couple of weeks in June.
Okay. Yeah.
So
As I say, I mean, at times a bit of cross referencing, um, is useful because, you know, there could be a habit there. Like if you look at how close Clare is to, to town parks, as you know, a town parks being, the townland in which the town of Ballycastle is, there could be a temptation to think, like I originally did, that the castle refers to, but the fact that there's not a castle there, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable.
yeah, thank you. I think Leslie had her hand up there. You're muted at the moment, Leslie, so you'll have to unmute.
Still on, yeah, okay, go ahead, Leslie, yeah.
Yeah. Could you? There's a road I'd like to know. It's Castle Nagree. What does Nagree mean?
Right. I'm gonna do a wee search here. Okay. And I'm gonna show you how to search it. Because when that happens, it's not. I'm not giving you a short answer,
No,
because
that's okay.
okay. So if you go into, we'll go into my share screen again here. Okay. So how do you spell the road? Castle,
Nagree. It's just, well, it'll be
Gree.
anglicized Nagree.
Okay. So if I look at that, okay, and there's a possibility if you can't find it, okay, there you go, Castle Nagree. Okay.
Yeah.
So Castle Nagree, the castle of the horse stud.
Okay. Thank you.
There you
Thank
are.
you.
But what the point was, if that hadn't have come up, what you can do is then, so say that's not recorded, and the word Gree is in it, take out County Antrim there, just go all, and then search into place name contains Gree, and say you hadn't got, you'd see well the word green, but if you scroll down, you're bound to come to agree. Right here, will see not happen now. I should have thought about. Let me see. Now agree. So you can put in elements of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so Rin agree. It'll tell you, like, so there's, for example, listen agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank
listen
you
agree,
very
photo of
much.
the horses.
Thank
So,
you very much. Yeah.
okay,
Thank
not
you.
at all.
Thank you. Okay,
I
Niall,
think Kevin's going to ask a question there. He's hand
sorry.
up. Oh, sorry, Paul. Yeah, sorry.
Hey,
Yeah.
Paul Boyle, yes. My townland is Drummerone.
Okay, yeah.
I was born there and I never knew what it meant. So it's been an education, and thank you very much for that. I have a lot of homework to do.
Paul, that's good. That's great to hear. That's basically that's the purpose of this, you know. And if people, and again, anyone, the thing is, anyone can do this. This is not, you know, look, I know that people go up and sure you speak Irish or whatever. That's a part of it, and I can make judgments on things that maybe I don't know, or maybe if there's a question about it, I might be in that position. But that's rare that I have to do that. You know, for the most part, the names that are there are pretty much, you know, are the ones. Kevin, so you gonna ask me a question, are you?
Niall, listen, first of all, it's good to meet you finally.
How's form?
Not too bad, now.
Good.
Just more or less to back up what Paul just said there. Quite a few of the people on this call here would know most of these townlands intimately. But I live myself in Lawson, the one there that you seem to be stuck on. Until tonight, I walked through them townlands daily, and I never actually thought of Drumahit and all that there what it actually meant. But the way you explained that there to me tonight, I can actually see that ridge running the whole way down.
Brilliant.
So you've just explained it very, very well. So well done, and thanks very much for that.
Do you see Drumahit? I'm gonna. You live in Lawson?
I do.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about Drumahit. Do you see? It's a great one, because it translated drum and hitch. There's a story, and this shows you how stories can cross over. Have you ever heard of the anybody who knows about the history of Columkill? There was a thing called the Convention of Drumcat.
Right, yes.
And basically it was whenever Columkill was asked to intercede. It was the only time he came back to Ireland after he left. He went to Illinois, and he came back to Ireland to intercede. It was an argument between the kings of Ulster and the poets. And the poets had too much power. They were the ultimate spin doctors at the time. Think of your man Cummings, you know, your boy that was sacked by Dominic Cummings. He was the original, bardic poet or fella. But the point is, so these guys were getting too much power, and the kings of Ulster wanted to get rid of them and banish them. And people thought this is a bit severe here. So the Columkill was brought back to intercede and to act as the peacemaker. And this was supposed to be the convention at Drumcat. Now, there's been an argument going on, not raging, but there's been an argument going on for years where Drumcat is. Drumcat is accepted now pretty much that it's in Limavady. Do you know Limavady Golf Course at all? I don't play golf, but see if you go into Limavady Golf, the Roe, what do you call it? The Roe Valley, you know the Roe Valley Country Park. See if you're standing there, you'll see a mound. That's supposed to be the Drumcat where the convention was. But I remember a way back, somebody from the Ballycastle area said, no, it's Drumahit. It's the one beside you, because that means it's sort of the same, sounds the same, but we're pretty much sure it's Limavady. But that can happen a lot. Stories can be transferred. You know, it's like the St. Patrick's buried here a day, but no, he's buried in Downpatrick, or he's buried X, Y, and Z, he's buried in Armagh. People will associate deliberately, particularly in the 1800s, you know, when people were forming ideas about names and they were associating folklore to it. We talked about, the one in Glenullen, for example, Slackaverty, about the whole idea of the vampire's grave or whatever. You know, there are other stories to do with that is called the giant's grave, and there's a story with the giant. That story has faded away because the story about the vampire is much more, it's cooler, and more people will come to the area to see a vampire rather than just a load of stones. So, but definitely look at place names, and see now with modern mapping, you can do anything. Google Earth, anything, just fire it together. See it's the best social life I've ever had. Friday and Saturday night,
I can definitely confirm that Columkill was in Drumahit. Nice it was here. It was nowhere near Limavady. What was the Benchias Road there?
Brilliant. Here we go.
And here, just one other thing before I go here. Drum the Keel, you mentioned it there, and you had the picture up at the small stone there.
Mm-hmm.
We actually collected stories from that townland, sorry. And up in living memory, that was still being used as a killeen. So it was, even with that historical place name there, that was used into the more modern times, So
it's class in a very sad way. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, do you see that? Is there a river near that site?
There is, Juliana Butler here, who's some.
I see Juliana coming in.
Well, Juliana's ground, the river would run down around their ground there from up near that area there,
Do you know why the Killings were put beside water? Because spirits couldn't cross over water, so they wouldn't cross from one townland into the next. That's why that was done. There's one here in Glenullen, and it's called Gary Hinaliani, and it's called the Garden of the Children. We've located it and all, and there's stones there. A lot of the stones were put down to stop predators. It's a very macabre thing, but a lot of these killing sites are beside water, and it was just this suspicion that the spirits couldn't go. So,
thanks, Nick. Thank you.
Leslie.
Sorry to butt in again. I just wanted to say I live on the Ballochmore Road.
Ballochmore.
Ballochmore, and it was the road that connected Tara with Dunseverick. And they came up from Tara, travelled up the river and crossed at Coleraine, and then walked the Ballochmore Road and crossed the bush at the mouth of the bush up to Dunseverick. So I'm very proud of living on the Ballochmore Road.
Yeah, that was one of the highways of ancient Ireland. The Ballochmore obviously means the big way. The word Ballochmore actually is the proper current Irish word for a motorway. See the site, there's a word called motor Ballach, which is no good. Ballach means a way or a path, and more means great. And that was one of the ancient pathways from Tara. Yeah, that's fascinating. Must go. If you see me walking past your house someday, you'll know what I'm doing.
Well, you can have a taste of bush if you like.
Oh, well, there we go. I'll be up. What are you doing Saturday?
Folks, we have two people who have been waiting patiently with their hands up.
Sorry.
So we'll go to them, and then we might wind it up for the evening. Carol, can we come to you first? And you're muted as well, so you'll need to unmute.
I have unmuted. Hello. I'm
Carol.
Canadian. My ancestors come from, and from this might hopefully be a simple one. The village they came from the townland they came from was Lisnagunna.
Oh, Lisnagunnog. That's a great one.
I've heard translated as Fort of the Churns.
Yeah, it's the fort. It's a fort. So Liss is actually the ground. Originally means the ground outside the fort, but as Nagunog is where they used to make milk. Canyog is what's the word in English? Where they used to, the big
butter.
But it's churn. That's it. Yeah. So it's where they used to churn. So it was the fort where they churned butter. So the close to that bay, there would have been cattle would have been kept, and the what do you call it, the beastlings, is it the first milk?
Yeah,
beastlings would have been brought out, and that's brought to this place, and that's where and it would have been done outside in the Liss part. The Liss part means the outer part of the fort. So there you go.
I thought it was. I wasn't sure how to put together fort and churning butter, or they seem to be different sort of activities.
Don't think of a fort as in a military way. And one of the mistakes that was made in translation of place names was Liss, Rath, and Down were all translated as fort, and they're not. Liss is the ground outside it. Rath is like a burial ground, and Down is more of a fortification. So Liss is just the if you think of the ring forts, it's the land, it's the ground outside it, basically.
Okay.
So
that makes sense, because they raised cows, so they were in the right place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then we'll finish off with Hannah there.
Hey, Hannah.
Hiya, Girl Meal my yogurt. I wanted to ask, I know you said at the start we could nick a copy of your PowerPoint, because I'd love to show my wins. Absolutely. How to figure out town names.
Do you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to stick my email address into this thing here, and if anybody wants it, send me an email. So
and Neil, I assume if people contact us, we're allowed to pass on your email address as well.
Far away, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It was great.
Go and work it in, Slant. All right.
That's fantastic. Look, thanks very much, folks, for coming out with us and sitting around your respective fires for tonight. Niall, thanks so much.
Okay, we'll be in touch. And look, anybody, listen, we're all in this together. This is not anybody wants to, meet up, go for a walk, go exploring. That's all good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, folks.